Hey guys, welcome back to Just a Geek in the Garage. Today I want to talk about tools needed for 3D printing. If you're not someone that thinks you're going to do a lot of 3D printing or even care about this subject, I would go ahead and just skip this video, to be honest with you. I'm doing this video because I did have somebody comment on one of my other videos that they wanted to see what tools I use for my 3D printers. So just quick background, I've been 3D printing since about 2018. Picked one up just kind of as a hobby, just to see what it's all about. And started off with a very cheap, no-name brand, $100 3D printer that lasted for a few years. Upgraded to an Ender Neo Max, and then got a supplemental Ender V2. And then my newest one that I got a few months ago is called the Elegoo Neptune 4. 4 Plus, I'm sorry. And basically with 3D printing, most of the tools, or pretty much all the tools that you need to assemble the 3D printer, because they usually come partially disassembled, come with the printer themselves. So let me give you an example. So this is the toolkit, if you guys can see, that came with the with the Elegoo that I just recently got. So the main things that you need is going to be Allen keys. I think they range from about 2 to 5 millimeter. A couple of these wrenches. Most of them you don't really use very often. Just a regular screwdriver, and then this is just a for a micro SD card. The cool thing about 3D printing is that they include all the tools, but then this tool holder, they don't include in the package. They include a file for you to actually 3D print. So you 3D print the file, and this basically goes and hangs on the 3D printer itself. So you have a place to hang all the tools. So that's definitely one nice thing about 3D printing, is that you can literally print the holders, some of the tools that you need, things like that as you go along, even as you upgrade your printer. Okay, having said that, so some of the other tools that might come with your 3D printer or not are going to be something like a flush cut like this. And the main thing for this is going to be when you have filament that you're feeding into the printer itself. Usually they're going to want you to cut it, at maybe like a 45-degree angle before you feed it in, just to make it easier to feed into the printer itself. So this is useful for that, and then also maybe cutting off some excess pieces from the 3D prints. Next up, this usually does not come with the printer, but I find it very useful, and it's going to be just a basic set of needle nose pliers. And when I say basic, I mean this can be, Harbor Freight, Dollar Tree, whatever you have laying around, because there's going to be almost zero pressure on this thing. This particular set I probably got 25 years ago in some kind of set that I don't even remember, but probably cost me a couple bucks. So this is something I use, and it's mostly for taking what's called supports off of your 3D prints. So when 3D prints come off the bed, sometimes you have what's called like an overhang. And since you can't just print negative space, you have to print the support. And when it's coming up, so you'd have like a column, for example. So you can either break it off, or if it's not easy to break off, you would just grab your needle nose, things like that. So if you've done any 3D printing, you know exactly what supports are. After that, really the most useful tool, the one you use literally almost on every single print, or at least I do, is going to be something like this, which is just a paint scraper. Now this particular one is from Quinn from Harbor Freight. I've had a few of these ones. I bought some Dollar Tree ones, things like that. I like these ones a lot because the tip stays actually very, very sharp. When you get your new filament, it usually comes like in like a shrink wrap. And this right here is very good for opening that shrink wrap. And then depending on what type of bed you can have a glass bed, you can have that thin metal bed. There's, the magnetic beds. There's a lot of different options. But for example, a couple of my printers are glass beds. So if the print is stuck, literally just scrape it off, and this usually will pop it right off. So something like this is great. Again, you can get away with a Dollar Tree one, and sometimes they'll even include something similar to this. But this Quinn one from Harbor Freight for a few dollars, I highly recommend. Very, very useful tool. From there, we have what's called a deburring tool. This one right here, basically, when you print things, sometimes there's stringing, overhangs, what have you. And this just basically goes over the print like that and will smooth it out without doing much damage like an X-Acto knife would. Having said that, you also have an X-Acto knife. Sometimes you have to just cut little pieces off of your prints, and that's what that's for. And then let's see here. Next up, this is a actual like razor blade scraper. So this is for something where if you can't get it off with this comes out. Luckily, I don't think I've ever had to use this, but I have it here just in case. And just a kind of a side note, this little tray that you see here, this is a magnetic tray that they sell from US General, from Harbor Freight. They usually put on toolboxes. I have this, kind of in front of my 3D printer, so I have all the tools I need to be able to access without having to worry about, looking for them in toolboxes and stuff like that. Next up is going to be this little kind of cutoff tool. I forget the actual name of this, but on certain 3D printers, you have what's called a Bowden tube. So let me kind of show you what I'm talking about. So some printers have this piece right here, where the filament basically goes in here, goes all the way through this tube, and then it's connected to what's called the hot end. So the tube would continue going on through here until it gets to the nozzle right here. So sometimes those tubes get clogged, sometimes you have to replace the tubes. One very, very important thing that you have to do is that when you're replacing these tubes right here, is that it has to be at an exact perfect 90-degree angle, because if it's not, you're going to have a lot more issues. So a tool like this, literally, this kind of just, let me see if I can get this to where you can see it. Let's do it this way. So it feeds in like that. You get it to whatever length you want, and then you just press, and then that gives you, it's basically just a razor blade and a piece of plastic, and it gives you that perfect 90-degree cut on the Bowden tube. Some of the newer printers no longer use that tube, so you don't necessarily need this. But if you have one of those printers, this is definitely very, very useful, and this thing sells for a couple bucks. Next up is going to be just, basic screwdriver. If you've seen it in some other videos that I have, this is one of my most useful tools I have in the garage. But sometimes when you have to take things apart, because sadly, at the end of the day, or maybe not sadly, 3D printing is a kind of a hobby for tinkerists, because it's very rare that you have a 3D printer that just simply works, always works, and never has a hiccup. Sometimes you're going to have to take it apart, you're going to have to clean things, you're going to have to troubleshoot. So it's just part of the hobby. And when you're looking at a 3D printer, this is actually a full, what's called a hot end from an Ender 3 V2. So this is what the front looks like that you would see. This is the bottom. This is basically the nozzle where the plastic comes through, and things like that. And this is the wheels where it connects to everything, heat sinks, stuff like that. So when you're looking at something like that, normally most of the screws that you see are going to be Allen keys, but every once in a while you're going to see a Phillips, and sometimes number 1, sometimes number 2. So again, just a regular screwdriver. So I have that sitting right next to it just in case. And then speaking of the nozzle sometimes again gets clogged, needs to be replaced, things like that. That's where just a little mini, let me get that on screen. You can use the little wrenches that come with them, but it takes forever to get them off. So I have this little basic, I think this is a Pittsburgh ratchet from, again, 20 plus years ago. And I have a little extension and a 6mm. And then basically this just goes right on here, and you use that to take the nozzle off. And because usually when you're taking the nozzle off, it's extremely hot, so you don't want to touch it. So something like this is great. And then you can put the new nozzle in here and then, reverse the order. So I just keep something like this. Again, doesn't have to be super high quality, snap-on, what have you. Just a super cheap ratchet works, because you're putting, very, very little torque on this. Because if you end up over torquing this, you're going to strip out the threads where the nozzle goes, which sadly I've done in the past. Last couple tools here, I have just little basic slip joints pliers, and this is when you're taking certain things apart in here, especially this metal piece right here. It's extremely hot sometimes because you have to heat it up to make sure the plastic is melted, or else if the plastic is solid, you're not going to be able to take stuff apart. And so if something is super, super hot, you want to be able to grab it with the slip joint like this and just hold it in place as you're taking it out. So that's why I have something like this. Again, it can be a very super cheap set. It doesn't have to be anything crazy. And the last couple of tools here are tools I just have here just kind of for the heck of it. Don't really use them. Just a pair of cheap Harbor Freight scissors, some tweezers, and another X-Acto knife. So again, basically, like I mentioned at the beginning of the video, the majority of the tools are going to be included in what you need to do. I'm sorry, the majority of the tools that you need are included in the printer when you purchase it. But like I said, a few of these extra ones make things a little bit easier. And especially if you have everything kind of together in a tray right next to the 3D printer, you never have to go looking for it, because anyone that's done a lot of 3D printing knows it can be a very frustrating hobby, especially if you don't have the right tools at hand. So let me know what you guys think. Are there any of the tools that I'm missing, in this particular segment? Or is there something else that you would add? And if you have any questions about anything specific, or I'm going to go into a deeper dive into any part of this, please let me know. Thank you, and please like and subscribe.